for the Genros. I woke up around 8 the next morning and found that La Gorda had sun my clothes and made breakfast. We ate in the kitchen, in the dining area. When we had finished, I asked her about Lydia, Rosa, and Josefina. They seemed to have vanished from the house. "They are helping Soledad," she said. "She's getting ready to leave." "Where is she going?" "Somewhere away from here. She has no more reason to stay. She was waiting for you and you have already come." "Are the little sisters going with her?" "No. They just don't want to be here today. It looks as if today is not a good day for them to stick around." "Why isn't it a good day?" "The Genros are coming to see you today and the girls don't get along with them. If all of them are here together, they'll get into a most dreadful fight. The last time that happened they nearly killed one another." "Do they fight physically?" "You bet they do. All of them are very strong and none of them wants to take second place. The Nagual told me that that would happen, but I am powerless to stop them, and not only that but I have to take sides, so it's a mess." "How do you know that the Genros are coming today?" "I haven't talked to them. I just know that they will be here today, that's all." "Do you know that because you see, Gorda?" "That's right. I see them coming. And one of them is coming directly to you because you're pulling him." I assured her that I was not pulling anyone in particular. I said that I had not revealed to anyone the purpose of my trip, but that it had to do with something I had to ask Pablito and Nestor. She smiled coyly and said that fate had paired me with Pablito, that we were very alike, and that undoubtedly he was going to see me first. She added that everything that happened to a warrior could be interpreted as an omen, thus my encounter with Soledad was an omen of what I was going to find out on my visit. I asked her to explain her point. "The men will give you very little this time," she said. "It's the women who will rip you to shreds, as Soledad did. That's what I would say if I read the omen. You're waiting for the Genros, but they are men like you. And look at this other omen. They are a little bit behind. I would say a couple of days behind. That's your fate as well as theirs, as men, to be always a couple of days behind." "Behind what, Gorda?" "Behind everything. Behind us women, for instance." She laughed and patted my head. "No matter how stubborn you are," she went on, "you have to admit that I'm right. Wait and see." "Did the Nagual tell you that men are behind women?" I asked. "Sure he did," she replied. "All you have to do is look around." "I do, Gorda. But I don't see any such thing. Women are always behind. They are dependent on men." She laughed. Her laughter was not scornful or bitter, it was rather a clear sound of joyfulness. "You know the world of people better than I do," she said forcefully. "But right now I'm formless and you're not. I'm telling you, women are better sorcerers because there is a crack in front of our eyes and there is none in front of yours." She did not seem angry, but I felt obliged to explain that I asked questions and made comments not because I was attacking or defending any given point, but because I wanted her to talk. She said that she had done nothing else but talk since the moment we met, and that the Nagual had trained her to talk because her task was the same as mine, to be in the world of people. "Everything we say," she went on, "is a reflection of the world of people. You will find out before your visit is over that you talk and act the way you do because you're clinging to the human form, just as the Genros and the Little Sisters are clinging to the human form when they fight to kill one another." "But aren't all of you supposed to cooperate with Pablito, Nestor and Benigno?" "Gennaro and the Nagual told every one of us that we should live in harmony and help and protect one another, because we are alone in the world. Pablito was left in charge of us four, but he's a coward. If it were left up to him, he would let us die like dogs. When the Nagual was around, though, Pablito was very nice to us and took very good care of us. Everyone used to tease him and joke that he took care of us as if we were his wives. The Nagual and Gennaro told him, not too long before they left, that he had a real chance to become the Nagual someday, because we might become his four winds, his four corners. Pablito understood it to be his task, and from that day on he changed. He became insufferable. He began to order us around as if we were really his wives. I asked the Nagual about Pablito's chances, and he told me that I should know that everything in a warrior's world depends on personal power, and personal power depends on impeccability. If Pablito were impeccable, he would have a chance. I laughed when he told me that. I know Pablito very well. But the Nagual explained to me that I shouldn't take it so lightly. He said that warriors always have a chance, no matter how slim. He made me see that I was a warrior myself and that I shouldn't hinder Pablito with my thoughts. He said that I should turn them off and let Pablito be, that the impeccable thing for me to do was to help Pablito in spite of what I knew about him. I understood what the Nagual said. Besides, I have my own debt with Pablito, and I welcome the opportunity to help him. But I also knew that no matter how I helped him, he was going to fail. I knew all along that he didn't have what it takes to be like the Nagual. Pablito is very childish and he won't accept his defeat. He's miserable because he's not impeccable, and yet he's still trying in his thoughts to be like the Nagual. How did he fail? As soon as the Nagual left, Pablito had a deadly run-in with Lydia. Years ago the Nagual had given him the task of being Lydia's husband, just for appearances. The people around here thought that she was his wife. Lydia didn't like that one bit. She's very tough. The truth of the matter is that Pablito has always been scared to death of her. They could never get along together and they tolerated each other only because the Nagual was around, but when he left, Pablito got crazier than he already was and became convinced that he had enough personal power to take us as his wives. The three generals got together and discussed what Pablito should do and decided that he should take the toughest woman first, Lydia. They waited until she was alone and then all three of them came into the house and grabbed her by the arms and threw her on the bed. Pablito got on top of her. She thought at first that the generals were joking. But when she realized that they were serious, she hit Pablito with her head in the middle of his forehead and nearly killed him. The generals fled and Nestor had to tend to Pablito's wound for months. Is there something that I can do to help them understand? No. Unfortunately, understanding is not their problem. All six of them understand very well. The real trouble is something else, something very ugly that no one can help them with. They indulge in not trying to change. Since they know they won't succeed in changing no matter how much they try, or want to, or need to, they have given up trying altogether. That's as wrong as feeling disappointed with our failures. The Nagual told each of them that warriors, both men and women, must be impeccable in their effort to change, in order to scare the human form and shake it away. After years of impeccability a moment will come, the Nagual said, when the form cannot stand it any longer and it leaves, just as it left me. In doing so, of course, it injures the body and can even make it die, but an impeccable warrior survives, always. A sudden knock at the front door interrupted her. La Gorda stood up and went over to unlatch the door. It was Lydia. She greeted me very formally and asked La Gorda to go with her. They left together. I welcomed being alone. I worked on my notes for hours. The open-air dining area was cool and had very good light. La Gorda returned around noon. She asked me if I wanted to eat. I was not hungry, but she insisted that I eat. She said that contacts with the Allies were very debilitating, and that she felt very weak herself. After reading, I sat down with La Gorda and was getting ready to ask her about dreaming when the front door opened loudly and Pablito walked in. He was panting. He obviously had been running and appeared to be in a state of great excitation. He stood at the door for a moment, catching his breath. He hadn't changed much. He seemed a bit older, or heavier, or perhaps only more muscular. He was, however, still very lean and wiry. His complexion was pale, as if he had not been in the sun for a long time. The brownness of his eyes was accentuated by a faint mark of weariness in his face. I remembered Pablito as having a beguiling smile. As he stood there looking at me, his smile was as charming as ever. He ran over to where I was sitting and grasped my forearms for a moment, without saying a word. I stood up. He then shook me gently and embraced me. I myself was utterly delighted to see him. I was jumping up and down with an infantile joy. I did not know what to say to him. He finally broke the silence. "Maestro," he said softly, nodding his head slightly as if he were bowing to me. The title of Maestro, teacher, caught me by surprise. I turned around as if I were looking for someone else who was just behind me. I deliberately exaggerated my movements to let him know that I was mystified. He smiled, and the only thing that occurred to me was to ask him how he knew I was there. He said that he, Nestor and Benigno had been forced to return because of a most unusual apprehension, which made them run day and night without any pause. Nestor had gone to their own house to find out if there was something there that would account for the feeling that had driven them. Benigno had gone to Soledad's place and he himself had come to the girl's house. "You hit the jackpot, Pablito," LaGuardia said, and laughed. Pablito did not answer. He glared at her. "I'll bet that you're working yourself up to throw me out," he said in a tone of great anger. "Don't fight with me, Pablito," LaGuardia said, unruffled. Pablito turned to me and apologized, and then added in a very loud voice, as if he wanted someone else in the house to hear him, that he had brought his own chair to sit on and that he could put it wherever he pleased. "There's no one else around here except us," LaGuardia said softly, and chuckled. "I'll bring in my chair anyway," Pablito said. "You don't mind, Maestro, do you?" I looked at LaGuardia. She gave me an almost imperceptible go-ahead sign with the tip of her foot. "Bring it in. Bring anything you want," I said. Pablito stepped out of the house. "They're all that way," LaGuardia said, "all three of them." Pablito came back a moment later carrying an unusual-looking chair on his shoulders. The chair was shaped to follow the contour of his back, so when he had it on his shoulders, upside down, it looked like a backpack. "May I put it down?" he asked me. "Of course," I replied, moving the bench over to make room. He laughed with exaggerated ease. "Aren't you the Nagual?" he asked me, and then looked at LaGuardia and added, "Or do you have to wait for orders?" "I am the Nagual," I said facetiously in order to humor him. I sensed that he was about to pick a fight with LaGuardia. She must have sensed it too, for she excused herself and went out the back. Pablito put his chair down and slowly circled around me as if he were inspecting my body. Then he took his low-back narrow chair in one hand, turned it around and sat down, resting his folded arms on the back of the chair that was made to allow him the maximum comfort as he sat astride it. I sat down facing him. His mood had changed completely the instant LaGuardia left. "I must ask you to forgive me for acting the way I did," he said smiling. "But I had to get rid of that witch." "Is she that bad, Pablito?" "You can bet on that," he replied. To change the subject, I told him that he looked very fine and prosperous. "You look very fine yourself, Maestro," he said. "What's this nonsense of calling me Maestro?" I asked in a joking tone. "Things are not the same as before," he replied. "We are in a new realm, and the witness says that you're a Maestro now, and the witness cannot be wrong. But he will tell you the whole story himself. He'll be here shortly, and will he be glad to see you again? I think that by now he must have felt that you are here. As we were coming back, all of us had the feeling that you might be on your way, but none of us felt that you had already arrived." I told him then that I had come for the sole purpose of seeing him and Nestor, that they were the only two people in the world with whom I could talk about our last meeting with Don Juan and Don Gennaro, and that I needed more than anything else to clear up the uncertainties that that last meeting had created in me. "We're bound to one another," he said. "I'll do anything I can to help. You know that. But I must warn you that I'm not as strong as you would want me to be. Perhaps it would be better if we didn't talk at all. But, on the other hand, if we don't talk we'll never understand anything." In a careful and deliberate manner I formulated my query. I explained that there was one single issue at the crux of my rational predicament. Tell me, Pablito, I said, did we truly jump with our bodies into the abyss? I don't know, he said. I really don't know. But you were there with me. That's the point. Was I really there? I felt annoyed at his cryptic replies. I had the sensation that if I would shake him or squeeze him, something in him would be set free. It was apparent to me that he was deliberately withholding something of great value. I protested that he would choose to be secretive with me when we had a bond of total trust. Pablito shook his head as if silently objecting to my accusation. I asked him to recount to me his whole experience, starting from the time prior to our jump, when Don Juan and Don Gennaro had prepared us together for the final onslaught. Pablito's account was muddled and inconsistent. All he could remember about the last moments before we jumped into the abyss was that after Don Juan and Don Gennaro had said goodbye to both of us and had disappeared into the darkness, his strength waned, he was about to fall on his face, but I held him by his arm and carried him to the edge of the abyss, and there he blacked out. What happened after you blacked out, Pablito? I don't know. Did you have dreams or visions? What did you see? As far as I'm concerned, I had no visions, or if I did, I couldn't pay any attention to them. My lack of impeccability makes it impossible for me to remember them. And then what happened? I woke up at Gennaro's old place. I don't know how I got there. He remained quiet, while I frantically searched in my mind for a question, a comment, a critical statement, or anything that would add extra breadth to his statements. As it was, nothing in Pablito's account was usable to buttress what had happened to me. I felt cheated. I was almost angry with him. My feelings were a mixture of pity for Pablito and myself, and at the same time a most intense disappointment. I'm sorry I'm such a letdown to you, Pablito said. My immediate reaction to his words was to cover up my feelings and assure him that I was not disappointed at all. I am a sorcerer, he said, laughing, a poor one, but enough of a one to know what my body tells me. And right now it tells me that you are angry with me. I'm not angry, Pablito, I exclaimed. That's what your reason says, but not your body, he said. Your body is angry. Your reason, however, finds no reason to feel anger toward me, so you're caught in a crossfire. The least I can do for you is to untangle this. Your body is angry because it knows that I am not impeccable and that only an impeccable warrior can help you. Your body is angry because it feels that I am wasting myself. It knew all that the minute I walked through that door. I did not know what to say. I felt a flood of post-fact realizations. Perhaps he was right in saying that my body knew all that. At any rate, his directness in confronting me with my feelings had blunted the edge of my frustration. I began to wonder if Pablito was not just playing a game with me. I told him that being so direct and bold, he could not possibly be as weak as he pictured himself to be. My weakness is that I'm made to have longings, he said almost in a whisper. I'm even to the point where I long for my life as an ordinary man. Can you believe that? You can't be serious, Pablito, I exclaimed. I am, he replied. I long for the grand privilege of walking the face of the earth as an ordinary man, without this awesome burden. I found his stand simply preposterous and caught myself exclaiming over and over that he could not possibly be serious. Pablito looked at me and sighed. I was overtaken by a sudden apprehension. He seemed to be on the verge of tears. My apprehension gave way to an intense feeling of empathy. Neither of us could help each other. La Gorda came back to the kitchen at that moment. Pablito seemed to experience an instantaneous revitalization. He jumped to his feet and stomped on the floor. What the hell do you want? He yelled in a shrill, nervous voice. Why are you snooping around? La Gorda addressed me as if he did not exist. She politely said that she was going to Soledad's house. What the hell do we care where you go? He yelled. You can go to hell for that matter. He stomped on the floor like a spoiled child while La Gorda stood there laughing. "Let's get out of this house. Maestro," he said loudly. His sudden shift from sadness to anger fascinated me. I became engrossed in watching him. One of the features that I had always admired was his nimbleness. Even when he stomped his feet, his movements had grace. He suddenly reached across the table and nearly snatched my writing pad away from me. He grabbed it with the thumb and index finger of his left hand. I had to hold on to it with both hands, using all my strength. There was such an extraordinary force in his pull that if he had really wanted to take it, he could have easily jerked it away from my grip. He let go, and as he retrieved his hand, I saw a fleeting image of an extension to it. It happened so fast that I could have explained it as a visual distortion on my part, a product of the jolt of having to stand up halfway, drawn by the force of his pull. But I had learned by then that I could neither behave with those people in my accustomed manner, nor could I explain anything in my accustomed manner, so I did not even try. "What's that in your hand, Pablito?" I asked. He recoiled in surprise and hid his hand behind his back. He had a blank expression and mumbled that he wanted us to leave that house because he was becoming dizzy. La Gorda began to laugh loudly and said that Pablito was as good a deceiver as Josefina, maybe even better, and that if I pressed him to tell me what was in his hand he would faint and Nestor would have to tend to him for months. Pablito began to choke. His face became almost purple. La Gorda told him in a nonchalant tone to cut out the acting because he had no audience. She was leaving and I did not have much patience. She then turned to me and told me in a most commanding tone to stay there and not go to the Genro's house. "Why in the hell not?" Pablito yelled and jumped in front of her as if trying to stop her from leaving. "What gall? Telling the maestro what to do?" "We had a bout with the allies in your house last night," La Gorda said to Pablito matter-of-factly. "The Nagual and I are still weak from that. If I were you, Pablito, I would put my attention to work. Things have changed. Everything has changed since he came." La Gorda left through the front door. I became aware then that indeed she looked very tired. Her shoes seemed too tight, or perhaps she was so weak that her feet dragged a little bit. She seemed small and frail. I thought that I must have looked as tired. Since there were no mirrors in their house, I had the urge to go outside and look at myself in the side mirror of my car. I perhaps would have done it, but Pablito thwarted me. He asked me in the most earnest tone not to believe a word of what she had said about his being a deceiver. I told him not to worry about that. "You don't like La Gorda at all, do you?" I asked. "You can say that again," he replied with a fierce look. "You know better than anyone alive the kind of monsters those women are. The Nagual told us that one day you were going to come here just to fall into their trap. He begged us to be on the alert and warn you about their designs. The Nagual said that you had 1 out of 4 chances. If our power was high we could bring you here ourselves and warn you and save you. If our power was low we ourselves would arrive here just in time to see your corpse. The 3rd chance was to find you either the slave to the witch Soledad or the slave of those disgusting, mannish women. The 4th chance and the faintest one of all was to find you alive and well. The Nagual told us that in case you survived, you would then be the Nagual and we should trust you because only you could help us. I'll do anything for you, Pablito. You know that. Not just for me. I'm not alone. The witness and Benigno are with me. We are together and you have to help all of us." "Of course, Pablito. That goes without saying. People around here have never bothered us. Our problems are with those ugly, mannish freaks. We don't know what to do with them. The Nagual gave us orders to stay around them no matter what. He gave me a personal task but I've failed at it. I was very happy before. You remember. Now I can't seem to manage my life anymore." "What happened, Pablito?" "Those witches drove me from my house. They took over and pushed me out like trash. I now live in Gennaro's house with Nestor and Benigno. We even have to cook our own meals. The Nagwal knew that this might happen and gave Lagorda the task of mediating between us and those three bitches. But Lagorda is still what the Nagwal used to call her, 220 buttocks. That was her nickname for years and years, because she tipped the scales at 220 pounds. Pablito chuckled at his recollection of Lagorda. She was the fattest, smelliest slob you'd ever want to see, he went on. Today she's half her real size, but she's still the same fat, slow woman up there in her head, and she can't do a thing for us. But you're here now, Maestro, and our worries are over. Now we are 4 against 4. I wanted to interject a comment, but he stopped me. Let me finish what I have to say before that witch comes back to throw me out, he said as he nervously looked at the door. I know that they have told you that the 5 of you are the same because you're the Nagwal's children. That's a lie. You're also like us, the Genros, because Genna Uro also helped to make your luminosity. You're one of us too. See what I mean? So, don't you believe what they tell you? You also belong to us. The witches don't know that the Nagwal told us everything. They think that they are the only ones who know. It took 2 Toltecs to make us. We are the children of both. Those witches. Wait, Pablito, I said, putting my hand over his mouth. He stood up, apparently frightened by my sudden movement. What do you mean that it took 2 Toltecs to make us? The Nagwal told us that we are Toltecs. All of us are Toltecs. He said that a Toltec is the receiver and holder of mysteries. The Nagwal and Genna Uro are Toltecs. They gave us their special luminosity and their mysteries. We received their mysteries and now we hold them. His usage of the word Toltec baffled me. I was familiar only with its anthropological meaning. In that context, it always refers to a culture of Nahuatl-speaking people in central and southern Mexico which was already extinct at the time of the conquest. Why did he call us Toltecs? I asked, not knowing what else to say. Because that's what we are. Instead of saying that we are sorcerers or witches, he said that we are Toltecs. If that's the case, why do you call the little sisters witches? Oh, that's because I hate them. That has nothing to do with what we are. Did the Nagwal tell that to everyone? Why, certainly. Everyone knows. But he never told me that. Oh, that's because you are a very educated man and are always discussing stupid things. He laughed in a forced, high-pitched tone and patted me on the back. Did the Nagwal by any chance tell you that the Toltecs were ancient people that lived in this part of Mexico? I asked. See, there you go. That's why he didn't tell you. The old crow probably didn't know that they were ancient people. He rocked in his chair as he laughed. His laughter was very pleasing and very contagious. We are the Toltecs, Maestro, he said. Rest assured that we are. That's all I know. But you can ask the witness. He knows. I lost my interest a long time ago. He stood up and went over to the stove. I followed him. He examined a pot of food cooking on a low fire. He asked me if I knew who had made that food. I was pretty sure that Lagorda had made it, but I said that I did not know. He sniffed it 4 or 5 times in short inhalations, like a dog. Then he announced that his nose told him that Lagorda had cooked it. He asked me if I had had some, and when I said that I had finished eating just before he arrived, he took a bowl from a shelf and helped himself to an enormous portion. He recommended in very strong terms that I should eat food cooked only by Lagorda and that I should only use her bowl, as he himself was doing. I told him that Lagorda and the little sisters had served me my food in a dark bowl that they kept on a shelf apart from the others. He said that that bowl belonged to the Nagwal. We went back to the table. He ate very slowly and did not talk at all. His total absorption in eating made me realize that all of them did the same thing, they ate in complete silence. Lagorda is a great cook, he said as he finished his food. She used to feed me. That was ages ago, before she hated me, before she became a witch, I mean a Toltec. He looked at me with a glint in his eye and winked. I felt obligated to comment that Lagorda did not strike me as being capable of hating anyone. I asked him if he knew that she had lost her form. "That's a lot of baloney," he exclaimed. He stared at me as if measuring my look of surprise and then hid his face under his arm and giggled like an embarrassed child. "Well, she actually did do that," he added. "She's just great." "Why do you dislike her, then?" "I'm going to tell you something, Maestro, because I trust you. I don't dislike her at all. She's the very best. She's the Nagual's woman. I just act that way with her because I like her to pamper me, and she does. She never gets mad at me. I could do anything. Sometimes I get carried away and I get physical with her and want to strike her. When that happens, she just jumps out of the way, like the Nagual used to do. The next minute she doesn't even remember what I did. That's a true formless warrior for you. She does the same thing with everyone. But the rest of us are a sorry mess. We are truly bad. Those 3 witches hate us and we hate them back. You're sorcerers, Pablito, can't you stop all this bickering?" "Sure we can, but we don't want to. What do you expect us to do, be like brothers and sisters?" I did not know what to say. "They were the Nagual's women," he went on. "And yet everybody expected me to take them. How in the heaven's name am I going to do that? I tried with one of them and instead of helping me, the bastardly witch nearly killed me. So now every one of those women is after my hide as if I had committed a crime. All I did was to follow the Nagual's instructions. He told me that I had to be intimate with each of them, one by one, until I could hold all of them at once. But I couldn't be intimate with even one. I wanted to ask him about his mother, Donna Soledad, but I could not figure out a way to bring her into the conversation at that point. We were quiet for a moment. "Do you hate them for what they tried to do to you?" he asked all of a sudden.